Hello and welcome back to the Business for Detailers podcast. Today we have a very, very exciting guest, Yvan Lacroix. Now, if you don't know this name, then you definitely should, and you will soon find out why this figure is so important. He is a renowned figure in the auto detailing industry, and he's had a lot of experience from working with major companies like 3M to founding his own company, DIY Detail. He's revolutionized the industry as a whole, from the DA polisher all the way to perforated clay mitts. This guy has done a lot. He is a huge figure in the industry. You're going to want to listen to the information that he has to deliver. His brain is a gold mine of gold nuggets in this world. Okay, so tune in. All right. Yvan Lacroix, hello and welcome to Business for Detailers podcast. How's it going?
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
No problem. We've got Gabriel Garcia, our co-host today. He almost didn't make it.
Yeah, I was a little disorganized today, but nope, definitely dropped everything as soon as Aaron gave me the call. So no, really excited to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Sounds good. I guess, Yvan, I guess we just want to, just pick your brain a little bit on the detailing industry and just have a bit of a casual conversation about the whole industry and we'll see where this conversation goes.
Yeah. I'm here to answer your questions.
Awesome. I guess just tell us, Yvan, a little bit about your backstory. Like, obviously you're quite a renowned figure in the auto detailing industry. How did you get to where you are now? Like, where was the beginning?
Beginning was, detailing cars when I was a teenager. Started my first business when I was 12, detailing cars, and went forward from there. I've always had my hand in the detailing industry, doing different things from research and development to owning detailing businesses to developing tools, developing chemicals. I worked for 3M. I worked for Porter Cable. I worked for Optimum Polymer Technologies. Now I started my own company a couple of years ago, DIY Detail. I have a couple great partners in that, and just seeing where the world takes me. It's a lot of fun. Detailing is a fun thing to do. It's always been enjoyable for me. And DIY Detail, the whole premise behind that was to bring the fun back into detailing. Not complicate it, not overthink it, not trying to make it this intensely complicated process that requires years of study to figure it out. I'm still learning. I learn every day. Learning is one of the fun parts of detailing because you'll never be perfect. You'll never be a master. You'll never be a guru. You will never know everything there is to know about detailing, because what you know today will change tomorrow.
That means a lot coming from you, especially Ivan, because obviously, you've had a lifetime in the industry, sort of at every level. Obviously, I was a huge fan of your work with O&R, and I often saw your collaborations with Rag Company, and I've sort of mentioned it before in the Facebook group, but I'll say it here for our listeners as well. Guys, I think Yvan Lacroix is kind of the Barry Maguire of our generation. Like in terms of just the innovation and the just not complicating things, right, Ivan? Like there's so many things that just get so needlessly complicated in this industry.
Yeah. Two things though. I don't have Barry's beautiful teeth and I don't have his wealth. But anyways, no, Barry's a great guy. I've met him many times, and he is he's an inspiration to all of us.
Sure.
Hopefully I'm as much an inspiration. I probably never will be as great as Barry is. But the whole goal is just to have fun and, for people to enjoy detailing. And whether you're like yourselves, you're doing it for a living, whether it's people doing it for a hobby, it should be enjoyable either way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I love that. Just simplify things. And that's like something like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, but in the business world, that's what he's doing with business. He's making this complicated thing that doesn't need to be complicated and simplifying it. And it's the same can go with any industry, I suppose. Detailing, most definitely. Let's not overcomplicate it and make it as simple as possible so that it is accessible to everyone. But also at the same time, don't you think that having that little bit of complication and not complication, but just like that little bit of difficulty to perform the service, that professional skill behind it, that's where the true value relies, as a professional delivering the service. What are your thoughts on that?
As a professional delivering a service, you have to deliver a service that's equal to or better to your customers' expectations. And that's as long as your customers have realistic expectations. If they're bringing you a car that's been lived in for the past 6 years and they expect you to make it new, that's not going to happen. But as a professional, that is what you're doing. As a business owner, we tend to, especially in the detailing realm, really, really over deliver. Your customer orders a hot dog and it's like the restaurant, the customer orders a hot dog and the waiter brings out a steak because the chef thought he looked hungrier than a hot dog. And that's something that detailers really are keen on doing, is over delivering. Under promise, over deliver, which is a phrase we've heard many, many times in detailing. And that's true to a point. So if the customer orders a hot dog, you might give them a chili cheese dog, but you're not going to give them a steak. And that is something that unfortunately in the detailing industry happens frequently. And as a business owner, as a hobbyist, so if we're transitioning from a hobbyist to a business owner, as a hobbyist, if you want to take 20 hours to polish a car and 8 hours to do an interior and, spend 50 hours on a car, great. That's fun. You're having fun. It's a hobby. When that transitions into being a business, now one of your responsibilities as a business owner is customer service. And the biggest component of customer service is profitability. Because if you are not profitable, you will not be around to serve your customers in the future when they need you.
Yeah, no, makes sense for sure. Can we just shift back a little bit, Ivan? I want to hear more about. You said you started detailing at 12 years old. That's impressive. Did you run a car detailing business at 12 years old, or did you just
actually? I did.
Just go out and start washing cars?
Amazing.
No, actually, before that, I started a office cleaning business, and my first detailing customer was a lawyer that I was cleaning his office, and he said, "Can you detail my car while you're here?" So went out, washed his car, and detailing wasn't a word back then. This was the early 80s, so the word detail didn't exist. But you want to wash? Can you wash my car?
What were the terms being thrown around?
The term detailing, I think, started somewhere in the 90s. So just around the time you guys were born. Yeah.
Around the time of the clay bar kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So detailing is a word, I think I first heard it in the early 90s. But as far as, my first detailing business or car washing business, the detailer paid, or the lawyer paid me more to wash his car than he did to clean his office. So as the young budding entrepreneur that I was, I thought, more profits, less time, let's go for it. And I've always been a car nut. I grew up in a household of car nuts, so it was just logical for me to take that next step.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And can we talk about like your business ventures a little bit? You said you've done some partnerships, like you mentioned Rag Company earlier on. What does that look like throughout your career? Do you think partnering up with other brands and businesses was a good move?
Oh, definitely. I've worked in research and development for 3M. I've worked in research and development for Porta Cable. I had my own businesses in terms of body shops, automotive restoration shops, detailing, and everything in between, cabinet making. I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I had a number of corporate jobs. With the Rag Company, I was a supplier to the Rag Company. So I was working for Optimum Polymer Technologies as a consultant at that time. And they were a retailer of Optimum products. So that's where I got making videos with the Rag Company and making videos obviously for Optimum as well. and then getting on different channels because of Optimum and eventually because of DIY. So.
Yeah, nice. Sounds like quite the journey. Lots of wisdom and knowledge tucked away in your brain there, Ivan.
So Ivan, if you don't mind, I've actually got a question, about the DIY range, because, to me personally, like when I was starting out, one of the first things I did was, I reached out, to like some local suppliers and some reps, and I keep them at my desk, which is quite funny because, it can be such a good illustration for people. But, like there's, local brands or even, big brands like 3D and stuff like that. I mean, this catalog, I've been told, there's just pages and pages and pages of product. And this is like, I was told this is a portion of the range. And I was so overwhelmed. Right. And I remember asking the rep for one of these brands one day, I was like, what do I need? And he's like, oh, just get everything. It's like, do I need everything? Like, do I need 4 different kinds of under bonnet cleaner? Like one specific under bonnet cleaner?
Yeah. One will do the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's a common thread in this industry is a lot of companies think the more products they have, the more they'll sell. And that's not always the case. They overwhelm the customers with choices. One of them, I don't know if, chemical guys, everyone's heard of them. They have so many SKUs. They don't even know. Yeah. They don't even know how many SKUs they have. And it's a revolving door of SKUs, and it's basically just colors and fragrances and labels. So a lot of companies do that. And it's an unfortunate thing in our industry. Meguiar's, you mentioned Meguiar's before. How many waxes does Meguiar's have? How many compounds? How many polishes? Right.
Yeah.
With me, my philosophy is keeping it as simple as possible. So you only need one all-purpose cleaner in a lineup. I was in a dealership once doing a training, and a rep from a brand shows up with his truck, and sort of like the Snap-on truck, but for detailers, right? Shows up, has all these chemicals in it. He walks into the dealership, and his job is to sell products. So he was just doing his job. But he looks at all the 5-gallon containers or the 20-liter containers they have sitting on the wall, and most of them are full. So he has to find something else that they need. So he brings this 5-gallon container of a yellow APC and puts it down and said, this one is for cleaning Japanese engines under bonnet. And I broke out laughing. Only. Yeah, I broke out laughing, and I asked him, well, what makes a Japanese under bonnet special? He said, well, they have different plastics and things like that. It's like, yes, but the Mazda that's there is made in Mexico. The, Volkswagen that's there, the cars are from all over the place. The Ford Crown Victoria is made in Canada. The Honda is actually, some Hondas are made in Canada for North American consumption. Nissans are made in Tennessee. So what makes it special? And the dirt that's accumulating under the bonnet is from the roads locally. It's not coming, that dirt isn't coming from Japan. So,
yeah, that's true.
But the manager, the detailing manager was on the verge of buying that 5-gallon container before I broke out laughing, because to him, that was a logical thing. And that's what these companies prey on, is that, okay, if we have something for soft paint, if we have something for hard paint, if we have something for leather, and we have something for plastic, and we have something for vinyl, you don't need any of that. If you look at the SDS sheets of most wheel and tire cleaners and you compare it to the SDS sheet of an APC, you're looking at the same thing. If you're looking at a specific under bonnet cleaner, same thing. It's an APC with a different color and a different label.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, Ivan. And from a business perspective, as a car detailer, it makes sense to have a streamlined set of systems that's very simple, that you can use one product for multiple uses. However, from the chemical company's perspective, and I mean, you can talk on this, like, let's just say for an example, right, a photographer. Right, a photographer. Yes. You have a all-round photographer and a wedding photographer. Someone's getting married. Who are they going to use? The all-round, all-purpose photographer or the wedding photographer? Obviously, it's slightly different, but you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, exactly.
You got an all-purpose cleaner, or you got a dedicated steering wheel cleaner. You know, and a consumer has a dirty steering wheel, they're most likely, they see that, they go, oh, that's especially for me. That's exactly what I need. And it's
Right.
going to serve the purpose better. So there is a bit of an understanding, at least, to know why companies do this.
Yeah, I call it label engineering, because all they're doing is changing the labels. And for myself in my shops, so before I was a brand rep or anything like that, I had multiple shops, and I simplified the process to be as simple as possible. So we had one wax. We didn't have 5 choices of waxes. We had one compound. That was it. We have 3 pads. That was it. We had one all-purpose cleaner. We didn't have a wheel cleaner. We didn't have a tire cleaner. We didn't have an interior cleaner. We didn't have any of that. We had rinseless wash that did just about everything we needed to do. And then the odd specialty item, like, solution finish for trim. You have, what do you call it? Romix Backset Platinum. I don't know if it's available in your part of the world, but if you ever have concrete on a vehicle or cement, it just melts it away and it doesn't damage anything. It's just a wonderful product. You have iron remover that you need. You have, water spot remover. You have some form of sealant. You have some form of ceramic coating. That's about all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I found so helpful about your range, Ivan, is that's something that really kind of helped me cut right through these massive bloated catalogs. Was realizing, exactly, like you need, one high alkaline cleaner with, your APC, rinseless wash, especially these days. And to be honest, I think that's probably just about all you need to actually clean a vehicle. Then to decontaminate a vehicle, you need a little bit more product, but even then, not that much more, right? Like you'll have your solvent, which is going to be your tar, your tree sap, your sticky residue, your fallout remover, which, especially if we use it in the way that you recommend, because I've heard so many positive things about Optimum Ferrex, and I think that the DIY product is so incredible as well, in the sense that you have this iron remover with, like built-in lubricants and surfactants, so that you can actually use it as a lubricant for your decontamination media. And that's another thing too that I was so grateful to be educated on, was that actually these days the clay bar is almost starting to go a little bit the way of the chamois, isn't it, Ivan?
Yeah, and it has its place, but the place is very narrow, and that is a really heavy paint overspray, and that's about the only reason I would ever purchase a clay bar or use a clay bar. The perforated synthetic decontamination towels or mitts, whichever one you want to look at, they do a great job, and they last so much longer. They don't mar the surface. They don't scratch the surface. They're easier to use. You'll get faster around the car because instead of using a 4 centimeter by 4 centimeter piece, you've got about a 15 by 15 centimeter area that you're working with. So it's giving you a lot more usability, and you also have less pressure because you're folding the towel or you're using the mitt, and that reduction of pressure points reduces the possibility of scratching, reduces the possibility of marring, and you can do a nice, quick, simple maintenance on a coated car or even an uncoated car with that as an entrepreneur, that was actually my highest grossing service that I had in my shops. That was a wash, clay, and seal.
Wash, clay, seal.
And on average, my employees would take about 20 minutes to do a car.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that is insane. And the no marring is a big one, because a clay bar definitely mars the paint, and you can see it especially on black paint. You can see that marring. So there's no point of doing a decontamination if you're not going to do a little polish afterwards, to get rid of that marring.
Correct.
So when did the perforated clay mitt come into action? When was that? When did that start becoming popular?
So I first, so back in maybe 2005, 2006, I was working for Optimum. We had a flat clay towel, just like everyone else's clay towel.
Yeah.
And I wasn't satisfied with the results I was getting. with those, and the supplier that we had went out of business. So I had to look for another supplier. And while looking for a supplier, I found a supplier in China that was very open to R&D. So that's when I developed the perforated synthetic decontamination media, because I wanted something that would let a bit of lubrication through, would have space for the contamination to go, and to be more flexible than the solid vinyl like material that we had in the early 2000s. So I think it came out, I think somewhere around 2010 or 12 was the first production ones actually made it to the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you think that, like, obviously you're constantly innovating? You've you're probably at the forefront with rinseless wash and a bunch of other like techniques. Do you think it is just constantly going to keep evolving with new products and new technology?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no reason for it not to. There's a lot of people that are invested in keeping the status quo, but there are a lot of people that are invested in, let's try to make this better. Let's try to make it easier. Let's try to make it safer. Let's try to make detailing more profitable. And it's little things like, the perforated synthetic decontamination towel that makes your lives, or makes detailers' lives, easier, safer, faster, and more productive. And I've always pushed for that. The original dual action polisher, the Porta Cable, that one was my fault as well. At the time I was working for Porta Cable, the first vehicle ever polished with a Porta Cable was a 78 Volvo 244 GL in Carlsbad Gold, which was a really ugly color. But those are things, yeah. But to me, that was a tool that only a hobbyist would ever pick up. Never would it be in the hands of a professional detailer. Because at the time it was, you had the rotary, or you had the rotary, or you had the rotary. But lo and behold, it caught on, and now we have people that have never picked up a rotary, and they've been detailing for 20 years. But the rotary is making a comeback.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Seen it around quite a lot. I mean, I guess it's just because it's so effective at removing a lot of paint in a very quick amount of time, right?
Even for finishing, I mean, you put the red jewelry pad on the end of a rotary, right?
Right. And actually the DA cuts faster than the rotary. That's a myth that the rotary cuts faster.
So what, okay, because I've never really used rotary. So can we go into that? What's the difference between them? And why is the rotary becoming more popular again?
Pad design more than anything else. So pad design hadn't evolved for the last 25 years. We had flat pads, we had waffle pads. There wasn't really a change. And for myself, I've always enjoyed finishing with the rotary, ever since my first days as a detailer. So finishing with the rotary, to me, it was always a logical step. And when I had my shops, I worked with Lake Country Manufacturing to develop pads for my franchise. And that is the red pad that we have today, available through DIY. But I developed that pad in the early 2000s because I wanted sort of the ultimate finishing pad. But I never had a need to sell it outside of my franchise. Obviously, if you have a franchise, you want to have exclusive products for them. But that was something that we just had in our franchises. And when I started DIY, that was one of the things I brought over with me from my past. And then the wool cutting pad that we have for the DA is also something I designed in conjunction with Lake Country. And again, it started life just as something in my shops. And from there, it transitioned into DIY. But the reason the DA cuts more aggressively than cuts faster than a rotary is, if you think of a rotary, you've got a 6-inch diameter pad, right? The outside of the pad is going really fast. The inside of the pad is going very slowly. So you only have that little outer edge that's actually doing a lot of the work. And your abrasive, it is, for all intents and purposes, your abrasive is locked in one angle, is up against the foam on one side, is up against the paint on the other side, and stays that way. And it eventually rounds over and it just keeps going. So that's why you finish better with the rotary. But with a DA...
Yeah, it makes sense. And yeah.
Yeah. With a DA, you have that oscillating movement as well as the rotation. So if you look at the pad on a DA, like in my case, the DA that I just designed and released is a 25 millimeter stroke. Because to me, the longer the stroke, the better the cut. The better the cut, the more use you get out of it, up to a certain point. We tried, in R&D, we tried a 27, we tried a 29, we tried a 30, a 35. They were horrendous. They were just bad. 25 was the magic number. But basically, now you have, if you look at your pad and you eliminate the rotational part of it, you just look at that 25 millimeter oscillation, anywhere on the pad, any point touching the paint is like a 25 millimeter rotary. And you have,
that's right.
You have, thousands of little 25 millimeter rotaries going around. So that's why it cuts faster. Now, the rotation part, a lot of people say you don't want your pad to stall, and no, you don't want your pad to stall, but probably for the wrong reason. A lot of people think the pad stalling is, I don't want my pad to stall because it's eliminating the cut. Actually, it just cuts the efficiency down about 15%. What it does cut down, or what it does do, is generate more heat, because now you're not moving as much air through the pad. So that's why you want to keep the rotation. And the lower heat you have, the faster you're going to cut. So heat does not generate cut. As human beings, we have this obsession with, if I put more pressure on this machine and I ramp the speed up and I create more heat, it's going to cut faster. That was true with lacquer paints. You guys have probably never dealt with lacquer paints, and many of today's detailers will never deal with lacquer paints.
Done so.
Yeah, exactly. But lacquer paints reacted well to heat. Today's paints do not react well to heat. And if you look at it, if you think of an ice cube and a marshmallow, do marshmallows exist? Or do you guys call it marshmallow? It's sort of a white gooey thing.
Yeah.
That's just sugar. Okay. Yeah. So if you take sandpaper to a marshmallow,
on planet Earth, Ivan.
No, but
not Middle Earth.
He's on far away, but we're still on the Earth.
No, but every region calls it something else. Take this, okay?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, right? It's universal around the world. Gabriel, you're from the U.S. In some parts of the U.S., it's called a soda. In some parts, it's called a pop. In others, it's called a cola. Yeah. So, and if if you're in the Northeast and you say, I'd like a cola, they'll look at you really funny. It's like, what? Or if you go to the South, the South of the U.S. and you order a soda, they have no idea what you're talking about because it's a pop. So, that's why I say, does the term marshmallow exist for you guys? But anyways, so
gotcha.
If you take sandpaper to an ice cube, you're actually going to cut the ice cube. If you take sandpaper to a marshmallow, it's just going to make a gooey mess. And think of that abrasive that's in your polish. That abrasive that's in your polish is like a rock, and it's going along the paint. Now, if your paint is cool, it's going along, it's actually shearing or cutting a little bit of that clear coat off. If that clear coat gets somewhat warm, it's plastic. And once it gets warm, that abrasive now grabs and rolls. So you're cutting the efficiency, you're reducing the efficiency of your abrasive by creating heat. If you've ever worked on one of the older GTRs with the Nissan self-healing paint, the best thing you can do for those, if you're in North America, best thing you can do for those is wait till the middle of winter when it's the coldest day possible and polish it outside. Then you're going to get the best job you've ever done on one of those. Or in your pad washer, put ice cubes. And that's going to cool the paint down.
Actually, I never thought about that. Yeah. That's really interesting. So on that note, Ivan, because I know you're obviously a big proponent of pad washing, and I've, it's really funny. I don't have a Lake Country system yet, but even just learning about how those systems work, I actually managed to replicate it. I put a little like toddler step stool that had a surface similar to that of a pad washer.
Yeah.
And just spray a little bit of rinseless wash on the pad, and then just and on the low speed, and it works really well. Obviously, I made a mess because I didn't have the walls of the Lake Country system to contain the splatter, but it worked exceptionally well. And so, like on that note, because that's something that I find really interesting, because not everybody in our industry, especially a lot of our listeners that are going to be starting out, part of my hope, particularly with this podcast episode, is that they actually get introduced to the new way of doing things. Like for example, spray polishes, right? Like the gold standard polish one spray on the pad while it's, sort of half spinning at a low speed, right? And then you've got your, stick the wool pad on the DA, and that's what you use to cut. And then you have your rotary jeweling pad, your jeweling pad on a rotary, and that's what you use to finish. And I know you've said in the past, Simon, like you only need two pads, really. Like you don't need to do more than a two-step polish. I was actually wondering if you could speak to us about that. Like, why wouldn't I, start on a super coarse wool pad and work my way up 3 different colors of foam before I finally get to the black one?
I don't have that sort of time. First of all, secondly, I'm getting older, so time riddles really fast. But as an entrepreneur as well, I don't want to be charging my customer for 18 hours of polishing. And you see this on groups a lot of time. You'll have 2 people. You'll have, someone like me going, hey, I did this car. I polished it. I, washed, decontaminated, polished the car, coated it. I was done in 4 hours. And I charged $2,000. And you're a thief. You're an idiot. You're a hack. There's no way you can do that. Must have looked horrendous, blah, blah, blah. Then you have the other person coming on, and I spent 28 hours polishing this car. It took me 4.5 hours to wash and decontaminate it. I coated it. I put 6 layers of coating on it. I had the car in my possession for 4 days, and I charged them $900. That person gets applauded. They're a hero. They're the best detailer that's ever existed. And that's, sort of the mentality in our industry. But going back to paint, we call it paint correction. And paint correction probably isn't, paint correction probably isn't the right term. And because we're actually not correcting the paint, we're damaging the paint. Now, we're making it look better, but are we actually helping something? We're helping our egos. We're helping the customer's vision of their vehicle, but we're never removing a scratch. We're removing the paint around the scratch. So if your scratch is 20 microns deep and you've eliminated that scratch, that means for 3 or 4 inches or, 10 or 12 centimeters around that scratch, now we've reduced the thickness of the clear coat by 20 microns if that scratch was 20 microns deep. So my goal as a detailer is I want to enhance the paint. I want to make it as good as it can be without damaging it further. And that means rounding over the scratches. So the wool pad does a great job of rounding over the scratches where we don't see the scratch anymore unless we get out our inspection light and, do all sorts of things. When I started detailing, the way we inspected a car was to put it outside and look at it in the sun. That was our inspection.
Yeah.
Then we started getting xenon lights, and those were like the Brinkmann xenon light. You can look it up. I think they still make it today. It was the original swirl finder light. And that light was just a, revelation. It made people go from doing 2-hour corrections to 20-hour corrections. Then you had the LED lights and then the Cree lights. And soon someone will have a 747 landing light at a 10%, 10 degree angle from the car and going, there's still paint on the car because I can still see a scratch in the steel below it. But when they put the car outside, it looks fine. And for your customer, so as a detailer, our goal isn't to make every car perfect. And if you ask any customer that's coming to you and your customer says, I want my car to be perfect. As a detailer, as a professional, your next question to them should be like when you picked it up from the dealership. And 99% of the people, to them, that's perfect paint. To us detailers, it's a good beginning. It's a start. It's okay.
That's right.
We can improve it. We can make it better. But to the consumer, that's perfection. So why are we striving to eliminate every little scratch? And we also have to think, what got it there in the first place? What got that vehicle scratched?
Yeah.
The consumer, the owner of the vehicle. They're the ones that made it that way. And if they made it that way, good for them. But if you go all out and you spend days polishing this car, damaging the paint, reducing the paint thickness to almost nothing, but there's no scratches left on it, there's no orange peel, it looks like a mirror. What are they going to do the next time they wash it? They're going to scratch it up. They're going to start right over again. You can educate them till you're blue in the face. They're still going to go through a car wash, or they're still going to, their kids are still going to play around the car. They're still going to take their pressure washer to a dirty car without a pre-rinse or without a pre-soak of a chemical and just hit it with the jet wash. So those are things that we have to take into account. Back in the early 1900s, the surgeon would walk out of the operating room triumphantly saying the operation was a success. Patient would die 2 or 3 days later. And the reason the patient died wasn't the operation. It was complications from the operation because the surgeon hadn't washed his hands in a week. And the scalpel that they used was the same scalpel they used for the last 20 people. Whatever. They didn't know what bacteria was, and they didn't know, about hygiene in that sense of the word. So for that surgeon, the operation was always a success. Hey, the knee's back in one piece, or the nose is straight now, or whatever. But the patient died. And that's what we're doing when we're over polishing a car. The operation is a success. We've made it look spectacular. It's beautiful. You can look at it at every angle with the brightest light in the world in a dark room. That's going to be perfect. Customer's going to drive it away. What's the first thing they're going to do? And you've both seen this before. Your customer, you've spent hours polishing the car. First thing they do is they rub their hand on it. Oh, feels nice. Right? And they just scratched it. Yeah. So why?
I think it's something that sorry.
We just have to come to the realization of who we're working for. Is it our egos or is it our customers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you, Yvan. And just on that note too, I wanted to actually, share something with our listeners, that I actually learned from you that was incredibly helpful to me. And you've pointed out in the past, Yvan, that, for a lot of vehicles, it's actually cheaper to rebuild the engine than it is to put a new coat of paint on it. And not only that, but also if you put a new coat of paint on a vehicle, and this kind of peek into the world of car manufacturing was so interesting and so revealing to me, because you think about the paint systems that they use in a factory setting, like they're painting just the bare metal, right? So they can put these things in kilns that go up to like 320 degrees Celsius. Okay, even a body shop, which you've run body shops, right, with hot tunnels, they're only going to go like 120 max, because you'll start melting the plastics and all this crazy stuff is happening. So even if you get yourself a really premium paint job from the body shop, your car is never going to get as good paint as the day that it came off the factory. So as a detailer, like, your job is to preserve that paint. If you're cutting away, just especially these days, because the paint is getting thinner and thinner, the clear coat, right? They want to save time, they want to save money. You can bake it on quicker the thinner it gets. So you actually have less to work with. This whole thing about perfect paint, it's just damaging your customer's vehicle, isn't it, Yvan?
Definitely. It's damaging the customer's car. And for what purpose? Back in the 80s, we would wax a car, and wax is a wonderful thing. It's still a useful tool. A lot of people have thrown wax to the wayside, but wax can do a lot of things. And one superpower that a wax has is filling. So instead of removing the scratch, let's fill the scratch. And yes, it's temporary, but if your customer just wants their car detailed because they're going to a wedding, or they have a special event or whatever, that's a great option for them. And as detailers, that's an option we can offer them. Just do a good decontamination and wax the car. And it's going to stay smooth. It's going to stay beautiful for at least a month or two. Yes, it's going to go away, but it's not damaging the car. So if you have a classic car that has original paint, wax is still a great tool for that. And if you have a ceramic coated car that the customer isn't really keen on maintaining it, or still wants to go through that car wash, well, offer to put a wax on it every 3 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And now you have a sacrificial
you can
layer.
wax a ceramic coated car. A lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, that's right.
I think there's this ideology going around the detailing industry where if you're detailing a car, it means you are perfecting every little bit of that car. It can't come back with a speck of dirt. It can't come back with a single scratch. And that's the mentality that I'm getting. And a lot of the guys that I work with, they go, this job's taking me so long. And I'm like, you're probably cleaning too much, or you're probably overdoing too much. Because it's true though, as you get better, as you get more skilled, you start to pick up on more things, and you start to see, like dirt and scratches that customers can't see. So you have this eye for detail, so to speak, and you end up becoming a bit of a perfectionist. So it is hard to draw the line. But
Yeah.
it is becoming like this ideology that's not healthy, I don't think.
No, we have a superpower as detailers, and that is seeing things that don't exist in the real world. Because we see it, the customer will never see what we see. And the customer as well, what they want and what we want are two different things. So as a detailer, we have to realize that, especially as an entrepreneur. So if you're a detailer, a hobbyist at home, go for it. Do those long hours and everything you want to do, because you're probably detailing to get away from your spousal, companion. But if you're detailing for money, your responsibility is to serve your customer what they wanted, what they ordered, what they paid for, and to be there to serve them again. So be profitable. So doing that little extra is fine. Doing that lot extra is not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for the customer. It's probably not good for the car. And it's definitely not good for your business. So you have to think in a different way being an entrepreneur as opposed to a hobbyist detailer. And that's the problem, is that most people get into detailing from a hobby perspective. They start as a hobby, then it starts as a weekend thing where they might be doing it 1 or 2 cars for friends and family. And then eventually it's a neighbor's car. And then all of a sudden they're running a business. And it's that slow, yeah. But it's that slow transition instead of saying, I'm an entrepreneur and this is the business that I want to run. So if you want to open a restaurant, you can't start cooking in your kitchen and then eventually, move out of your kitchen and start serving the neighborhood and all that. Legally, you can't do that. So if you want to open a restaurant, you have to have all the right, safety equipment. You have to have a commercial kitchen with, all the cleanliness that goes with it and all of that. And you have to monitor your temperatures for the food, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things involved with opening a restaurant. So the investment to open a restaurant is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the investment to open a detailing business is a bucket, a chamois, some sort of towel, and some soap. And then it evolves from there.
Go
ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I'll let you finish. I apologize. There's a little bit of a delay.
Oh, okay. But basically, as detailers, if we're transitioning from detailer to entrepreneur, we need to really evaluate ourselves as entrepreneurs and look at it as, what if someone were to come here to buy my business today that has never detailed before in their life? Can they do what I'm doing? And if they can't, you need to reevaluate your business and find out how to be able to, bring that to existence with standard operating procedures and manuals and all that, so that you can take literally someone off the street that's never been in your building before, that's never touched a car, never detailed, never washed a car. And if they can read your SOPs and follow without asking you a question and without having to think for themselves, now you have a business you can sell.
That's right. Yeah, and I remember that's something I think I heard you say once, Ivan, that when people buy a McDonald's franchise, I mean, sure, there's the brand awareness and the location, and those are extremely important things, right? Like, it's hard, you can't really overstate how relevant those things are, but also the fact that a Big Mac is going to taste the same everywhere else in the world, that's all down to the SOP, isn't it? And it's not even just the SOP for actually assembling the burger, but it's the SOP for, the whole supply chain from start to finish of, the wheat that makes the bun and the sesame seeds and how they're put on and, all that sort of thing. It's like, because I remember I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he was saying, it's so difficult, to balance a good output with being efficient. And I said to him, like, no, I think it's the opposite. I think efficiency is what actually breeds quality and consistency. Would you agree with that, Ivan?
So I've been saying for a long time that efficiency breeds quality, and it does. It is something that really changes your outlook when you can have an efficient way of doing things, and that efficiency breeds standardization. So if you look at an automotive manufacturer, right? They can be ISO 9001 certified. And ISO 9001 certified doesn't mean that it's perfect. It means that it's the same every time. So if a manufacturer were to put out a vehicle with three 14-inch wheels and one 15-inch wheel, But as long as they put that 115-inch wheel on every car in the same position, they still meet the ISO 9001 certification, even though the car is imperfect. So, so a lot of companies will say they're, ISO certified 9001, 9002, depending on what it is. And that just means they do it the same every time. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but they're efficient in how they do it. And they're consistent. And consistency is what we're looking for. Now, every car is different. So it's very difficult for us as detailers to be consistent and perfect. But we can, target our methods. We can change our methods to make it so that, yes, we're doing it the same way every time. So washing, for an example, I always start with the roof. And then I do the windshield, then I do the hood, bonnet, sorry. Then I go around to the wings, doors, back into the car, the boot, go down the other side, and I finish with the front bumper. But that is the way I wash a car. That's not the right way. That's not the wrong way. That's just the way I do it. And I'm consistent in the way that I do it. Therefore, A, I'm efficient. B, I don't miss anything. And that is where people get into the problem of missing something. And they miss it. An example, in our videos, Nick, if you go back to our older videos when we're washing a car, to him, every wheel well was square. Because he'd go over the wheel well with the sponge or the wash mitt, then go down one side, down the other. But you could see in the tracing of the soap that he went square around the wheel well. But to him, and this was Nick's way of thinking, because Nick ran a detailing shop, but he was very much the enthusiast detailer. So efficiency wasn't his thing, nor was profitability, unfortunately. And that's why he's not running a detailing shop anymore. But basically, to him, it was like, well, if I didn't get it in the wash, I'll get it in the decontamination, or I'll get it when I'm drying. That doesn't breed quality in any way, shape, or form. But he was much slower than I was in washing a car, because he's over here, then he's over there, then he might be up here, then he might be down there, and just all over the place. Whereas
this is my problem.
Yeah. For me, I can have my eyes closed and still get the car washed without missing anything, because I know where I'm going. I know where I've been. I know what I'm doing. In my shops, one of the things when I was training, a new technician, was to tell them that we have a standard operating procedure. And the most important part of the standard operating procedure is you actually following it. And the reason we want you to follow the standard operating procedure is, if you happen to die in the middle of a detail, we'll be able to move the body out of the way and finish the detail for the customer. We'll call the ambulance, don't worry. But, or the coroner, whatever it is. But by where you died tells us exactly what you've done and what needs to be done on the vehicle. And, it sort of piques people's imagination as to, oh shit. But, thankfully that never happened. Never had to move a dead body out of the way to clean a car. But with that brings the imagination of the person to realize that, okay, I need to do it the same way every time. And we had, in our shop at some points, we would run 2 shifts. So we'd run a day shift and an evening shift. And we were running those shifts. The trade-off between, the first shift and the second shift wasn't that long of a process, because just by where the tools were, they could tell what was done and what still needed to be done still needed to be done on the vehicle. First day with the new mouth. So, but they are, with that, we have the process in place, and my employees, they knew exactly what had been done, what needed to be done, and they just carry on. There isn't this half hour of explaining, well, I polished the bonnet. I polished half of the boot lid. I polished half of the roof, and I still have to do the rear fender and the front bumper. It's like, no, just do what you need to do, follow this specific order, and go for it. But standard operating procedures are a scary thing for many detailers, because it's a business, or it's a series of business documents that can take you years to develop, unless you actually hire a professional to do it. And a professional coming into a business like a detailing business, you're going to have that person in your way for 6 months. That's how long it takes a professional to develop standard operating procedures for a detailing business.
It's actually really encouraging to hear you say that, Ivan, because when I first learned about SOPs as a concept. We actually did this phenomenal podcast episode from Steven of Pro Detailing Tips, and he actually comes from the HR and manufacturing world. So he's an expert on like Lean and Six Sigma and all these fantastic methodologies. And I sort of came away with that with this, newfound zeal, for SOPs. And I was like, I'm going to knuckle down, I'm going to, and I thought it was going to be like a couple days to be, and then I realized like, no, this is actually, and I actually went through a period. I'm going to, be a little bit vulnerable here. I felt quite insecure for a bit that I was like, well, I know what an SOP is. Why is it taking me so long to actually develop one? And then, when we had, the training session in the school group and, you mentioned, it can take a year while you're doing this. I felt, this sudden sense of calm. And I actually gave myself a bit of a pat on the back because I actually think I came up with, at the moment, I think I've got the shape of my SOP, and already my work has just increased dramatically in consistency, in quality, in efficiency, and speed. And the way that I've done that personally that I find so helpful, I'm just going to mention this to our viewers as well. A system that works for me, it may not work for everyone. But because what I used to do, I would do the carpets, right? And then it was actually Steven who shared with me this tip, that, this guy was trying to use Lean to wash his dishes, which was quite amusing. And he would, take a dirty dish, he would rinse it, he would soap it, he would rinse it off, he would dry it and put it away, and do that with every single dish. And that was always quicker than when he would do it in batches. Which it seemed counterintuitive, but it worked. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try and apply that to the car that I'm doing. And so instead of vacuuming the carpets and the driver's seat and then the passenger seat and then the back areas, what I've now developed is I've got myself a trolley that has all my machinery for doing the interior. So I've got my vacuum, I've got my steamer on there. I even have the pneumatic line for my air compressor if need be. I only use the tools that I need for a given task. So before I start the task, I'll realize, hey, I only need the air compressor and a rinseless dampened towel for this if it's a pretty tidy car.
Yeah.
If it's a bit dirty, I'll probably need something a little bit alkalinic and probably I'll need a steamer, and maybe something that creates a bit of a lather and it's going to take a little more time. But then now what I've started doing is I'll open the door and I'll clean out the jams on the door and on the vehicle. Then I'll do the door card, and then I'll do the window, and then I'll do the seat, and I'll blow all the junk off the seat if there's junk on there, put that on the car, and actually now do the carpets last. And that has been huge because now what I'm doing is I've basically split the car up into more or less 4 quarters. And the area that always requires the most attention is the driver's seat because it's also the one that's most used and has the most intricate areas. And then it's so rewarding because by the time I have a perfectly pristine driver's area and the rest of the car is still filthy, I've now done the hardest part, and the rest of the detail, it's like, it's all downhill in a good way. You've got the momentum and it's just, it's been so helpful. It's just a little yap session about,
but that's exactly how I detail interiors. And that's how it was done in our shop is once you enter one door, everything that's accessible through that door, you do, and you work your way from the center console out to the door. And when you close that door, you don't need to reopen it again. Everything at that point is done. And that's from cleaning the windows to vacuuming to everything else. Our process was very simple. We would start by blowing out the interior. So just a simple blowgun, get under the seats, get all the, the dust off the console and the steering wheel and all of that fun stuff. But while that cloud is floating in the air, you close the doors, let it drop down, then wash the exterior. Because to us, the exterior wash was always included with an interior because I didn't want my employees rubbing up against a dirty car and getting themselves dirty. I didn't want to leave a trace of someone rubbing up against a car, and also the presentation. It only takes like 10 minutes to wash a car. So you just include it in your price. We never told the customer like, oh, well, if you want us to wash the exterior, it's an extra $35. We just included it in the price. Much easier that way. And when they pick it up, they're surprised. I don't
back dirty cars.
And the customer is surprised. Oh, my tire, my car's clean and the tires are shiny. That's the important part. But at that point, now the dust is settled. Give a quick vacuum to the seats. Sit on the seat. Do the console, the dash, the steering wheel, that whole area, the headliner, windshield. Then get out of the seat. Now you're out of the seat. You can do the seat. You can do the door card. door jamb, clean the window, close the door, move on.
Mm.
No, that's fantastic. And actually, on this note, Ivan, we have a little bit of a minor controversy in our group at the moment. I'm only joking; it's nothing serious. But I'm sort of now of the opinion that I actually think it makes more sense for a beginner detailer to get an air compressor with a vortex gun or a tornado or whatever. There's a million different kinds of these things out there now. I actually think that's a better useful tool before a pressure washer. But what's your opinion on that? Because I know not everybody's going to agree with that. Far from.
To me, a pressure washer is not a necessity in detailing, but a compressor is. So I'm 100% with you on that one. Get the compressor first. The pressure washer is not really necessary. So I know a couple shops, they're in the US, and this is a shop. Well, they have multiple shops, but this business does roughly about $25 to $30 million a year in detailing. So you can say they know what they do. They have proper SOPs. They have everything in place. They have 70 some employees. They're doing well. They don't have pressure washers. They don't see a need for a pressure washer. It's just not something they have. But
So
yes,
what if
they've
a car
got
comes
really
in and
big.
it's really dirty, really dusty. There's dirt all between the grills. How do you effectively clean that without high pressure water?
They use a hose and rinseless.
Okay, so they're using water. They're using a hose.
Oh yes. They're using a garden hose,
okay,
but they're not using.
Yeah, gotcha.
They're not using a pressure washer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that note too,
Makes
something
sense.
that I find fascinating, if we think about the top spec pressure washers in our industry, the 5,000 New Zealand dollars Kranzler, right?
Yeah.
What's desirable in these high-end pressure washers is low pressure and high flow rate. And the reason the flow rate is so valuable is because it's so, it speeds the rinsing process. But if you're using rinseless wash, you don't have to rinse your car. But what I found really interesting is once I realized that on a technical level, the flow rate is much more important than the pressure because you only need 1,600 tops for paint if you're going to use a pressure washer at all. Well, turns out your hose is going to give you 5 GPM. Like there's no pressure washer unless you're spending a ridiculous amount of money, or you're getting a giant loud petrol thing, which especially if you're mobile, it's not gonna, but yeah, a hose is capable of, you can get a lot of dirt that way. And then if you have traffic film, that's not really a pressure washer question, isn't it? That's an all clean or a built hammer touchless or some kind of, high alkaline pre-soak that's actually gonna, go in and break down, I remember learning the chemistry about it recently, but basically just break down that dirt.
That makes total sense.
And you even don't need those things. To me, the high alkaline pre-rinse and trying to break down traffic film, that's just a waste of time.
Okay.
Put the soap on the vehicle, put the rinseless on the vehicle, do the contact wash. The contact wash gets rid of that traffic film.
So a question there, Ivan, though, because I have seen you in your videos using on some vehicles that have never been detailed before, because I get a lot like that. Because I agree, if a vehicle's been detailed or it's had some kind of protection, all you need is rinseless, period. But I think on a vehicle that's like say 5 or 10 years old, it's probably never had protection, in the entire time that the owners owned it. I saw you guys put some foam on, some all clean before you go in and do your rinseless contact wash. Like there's still a place for that, right? Or am I kind of misunderstanding something?
No, there's a place. And so in our videos, we strive to be educational and we strive to meet everyone's needs. So there are some videos where we show just a very basic wash with no, just a garden hose. There's some videos where we've used no hose. And there are some videos where we're using the Kranzler and every tool known to man. So that is something that if you want to do that, you can, but in reality, it's not required and it's not necessary. And 10 years ago, we didn't have this sort of thing. And 20 years ago, we didn't have this sort of thing. And pressure washers 30 years ago were not something you saw in a detailing environment. They were for people removing graffiti and they were for people cleaning heavy machinery, but they weren't for cleaning cars. So the industry has evolved. And as detailers, we tend to like our toys and we tend to like complicating processes. Overthinking is an Olympic sport in detailing. If we can take a process that has 4 steps to it, well, if you can do it in 26 steps, it must be better, as opposed to striving to do it in 3. So like I said, overthinking is a very competitive sport in this industry. And the manufacturers, a lot of the manufacturers take those overthinking ideas and go,
they're more than
I
happy
can
to
run with
apply.
this. Yeah. It's like, oh, they want a, high alkaline, free foam. We can do that. A high alkaline pre-foam, look at the SDS sheet. It's an APC.
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
then Ivan, then I'll ask the question, like what so understanding then that foaming alkaline onto the paint surface of a vehicle, if that's only a niche thing that you shouldn't often do. So I guess for me that begs the question, when should you do it then?
The vehicle that's covered in insects, the vehicle that hasn't been washed in 20 years, the vehicle that is covered in grease or whatever. But if you're confident that your soap or rinseless will not break through it, then you need to use the APC. In my shops, doing thousands of cars a year, there might have been 2 to 3 cars that got a APC pre-rinse per year.
Interesting. That's a very helpful mental image in those numbers. I really appreciate that. On that note, then Ivan, I'd like to ask you another question, because earlier you were talking about one of the benefits of wax being that filler property, and I think that's really interesting. So earlier we talked a little bit about factory paint, the importance of preserving it, and another thing that I wanted to add, again, just for our listeners, is the top 20% of your car's clear coat is what is richest in UV inhibitors. So, sanding, that away by means of polishing, you've now also significantly reduced the lifespan of the paint. And it kind of goes downhill, especially if you're not putting on some serious protection, at least a ceramic coating or something like that after the fact, or a regularly applied wax. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Ivan, though, is what I think is a very promising technology in our industry. However, it's sort of, it's cutting edge because it's innovative, or it's cutting edge because it's a scam, right? And I know a lot of people think this. Liquid PPF or self-leveling hand-applied clear coats. I would really love to get your opinion on this, because I know there's a few, brands and companies, like I know there's like Hobbyist Patina, Icon Rock Clear, I know Xcoat, Paint Pros LLC has shiny car stuff. That's what I'm quite interested in. And the promise of these products is that they basically, it looks like you're smearing linseed oil on it, but it does cure, and you can get a year out of these things, longer if you ceramic coat them. Have you had any experience with this stuff? Like, is it a scam? Does it work? Does it do what it says on the bottle? Like, what's the deal with this? What role does this have in the detailing space in 2024?
Okay, so we'll start with one. We'll get it out of the way quickly. Liquid PPF. There's a company called Clarity Coat. They're based out of the US. They're worldwide. That stuff is legit and it works. You can do a color change on a car. You can do all sorts of things. So look up at claritycoat.com. Just great company. They do a great job. Now,
awesome.
The other ones you mentioned, Xcoat, Restore FX, Icon Rock Clear, Hobbyist Patina, shiny car stuff, all that stuff. And there's actually a company called Snake Oil. So, it's ironic, but, the only company to me in that whole space of the wipe on clear coats that is actually doing a good job and actually portraying wipe on clear coats for what they are is Snake Oil. Now, they're portraying it as A, temporary, B, it's not aesthetically pleasing. As a detailer, a wipe-on clear coat is something that I've worked with many of them. So I worked with Xcoat. I've worked with Restore FX. I developed my own. I've worked with a number of them. I'm developing another one right now. But that being said, there's a place for them, and that place isn't necessarily detailing. It is the last ditch effort before you can't polish the car anymore.
Right. Because this is because I've actually spoken to John Garrett of Shiny Car Stuff, and the takeaway that I got is he's like, if you have some kind of like 90s JDM Honda thing, like a lot of guys drive here, it's full of swirl marks. That paint is probably pretty oxidized. Like you probably don't really want to polish it. They probably don't even have the budget to polish it. Like you can put this stuff on there, and it's not gonna look like a paint corrected car, but it's not going to look horrible as like you only use it on real bad paint. And even then you might get like a year out of it. It's not a long-term fix. It's kind of a last ditch. would that be an accurate applicate? Like I wouldn't put it on a $100,000 sports car, but
No.
maybe on a car barely worth $2,000, put that stuff on. Is that sort of the place of it, do you think?
Yeah, there's so there are companies in that industry, in that space, that are portraying the wipe on clear coat as a ceramic coating, as we're putting it on a brand new Ferrari. They've just ruined that new car. Yeah. And this is what you, as an installer, this is what you should be aiming for, is putting it on these high-end cars because it's better than a ceramic coating, and it does this and it does this and it does this. And most of the companies are unfortunately based in the USA. And I say unfortunately because they don't know what the metric system is. So you have people taking a 250 milliliter bottle and saying that in one application, they're building 60 microns. Now, I'm from Canada. Yeah. I'm from Canada. We have this thing called the metric system, and you guys have it as well. Now, Gabriel, you're a transplant from the US, so we'll forgive you on this.
I've adopted.
Yeah. But you've got the weirdest New Zealand accent I've ever heard. But that being said, I tried to explain to one of these people at SEMA one year that they were outright lying to people, and they still couldn't figure it out. So they were saying that out of a 250 milliliter bottle, they were applying 60 microns. Now, the factory clear coat on the car is less than 60 microns. When you take it to a body shop and have it painted, to get 60 microns on a car, they're using 4 to 5 liters of clear coat. Now, explain to them that the average car has 10, a small car will have 10 square meters of paint. And 1 micron spread over, or 1 milliliter spread over 1 square meter gives you 1 micron of thickness.
Yeah.
So 10 microns gets you 10 milliliters. 10 milliliters gets you 1 micron on a small car. But they have a 50%, most of these things have at least a 50% solvent. What do you call it? Yeah, solvent content.
Carrier.
Yeah, solvent content. So now you need 20 milliliters to put 1 micron on a car.
True.
20 times 60 is what? 1,200. 1.2 liters. And they're doing it with 250 milliliters.
Yeah. It's like, it's like the homeopathy of detailing at that point, right?
Yeah.
Hope I haven't offended anybody with that. Right. Well, okay. No, that's really interesting. So actually, Ivan, can I just ask a follow-up question then?
Yeah.
You talk about, they're saying put this on a brand new Ferrari, and now this is wrecking the paint. What I'm trying to think how to explain this. Obviously, I know you shouldn't, but can I ask, I guess on a technical level, what would go wrong if you did put a product like this on that kind of paintwork that really there's no reason to put it on?
Right. So first of all, no matter how good you are of an installer, at some point you're going to get a white mark because you're not dealing with flat panels. On a flat panel, I can apply it to a car that you'll never see it. But as soon as I get around curves, if you don't have enough material, it's not going to self-level. If you have too much material, it leaves a run. Right. So you're either going to get a run somewhere, or you're going to get this little, what looks like a white mark. The other thing is, if there's scratches underneath it, you still see those scratches. They're filled in, but unless you compound the car first, which takes time, you're not going to get a good result. So the deeper scratches, you still have to compound them, around them over, or wet sand them. The other thing is, if they don't prep the car properly, and prepping the car properly means removing the emblems, removing the door handles, removing, moldings, just like prepping it for PPF or, a wrap. So unless they're doing that, then they're going to have edge work. They're going to have, an accumulation around the emblems, or if the emblem ever comes off, you're going to see it. The final thing is, it needs a mechanical bond. And a lot of these companies are saying, oh, no, you just wash the car, decon it, and put this on. No, you need a mechanical bond as well as the coalescent bond. Yeah.
True. And to be fair, actually, and I got to give John Garrett some credit for this one. He actually, he does say that the ideal if you have the time for it, is, he actually recommends, go over the car with 3K, and then you create little pits for the stuff to adhere to, basically.
Yeah. And having had to wet sand and polish this off many cars because the dealer put it on wrong, and now the customer was coming back and complaining when it was starting to delaminate, it's not fun stuff to deal with. And that was one of the most renowned brands in the industry. So
interesting.
Yeah. So basically, yes, it's a last ditch effort. It is something like Poppy's Patina, same thing. They're saying you take a rusted old vehicle that, the paint is beyond saving, and you just want to keep that patina look, then use Poppy's Patina. That's a good use for that part. Yeah.
It's almost like a hard curing gloss enhancer rather than a clear coat as such.
Right. Yeah. But like I say, some of these companies are just taking people's money, not the consumer's money. They're taking the detailer's money, because you have to invest and buy a territory, and you have to pay X amount for training. You have to buy, X amount of product. So it's like a multi-level marketing scheme gone bad.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So do you think, I just, you sort of mentioned researching, like, can we get an honest DIY version of this in the future potentially?
That's in the works, but the whole point of it is not to have to buy a license. It might be a C6 or it might be a DIY product, but it's
right.
The whole goal of it is not to be complicated. So a lot of them require mixing. Some of the companies,
truly, wow.
You have, product A and product B, you have the base coat and the hardener, but depending on what temperature, you might have to use temperature and humidity, you might have to use base coat A or base coat B and hardener 1 or hardener 2 or hardener 3. And once you've opened those bottles, they're only good for 30 days. So you've opened a gallon, used 250 milliliters on the car, then the weather changes, and now you have to throw that gallon away after 30 or 90 days.
That's dreadful.
Yeah. So, from the people selling this stuff, they have a great business model. Not one vowed for longevity, simply because people come in and out of the system frequently. There's always new installers, and there's always installers leaving with a grudge. So that's the problem with this industry. There's a few that are consumer available, like Poppy's Patina is one of them that's
or shiny
consumer
car
available.
Stuff I know is a big one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. With that, good. They're not over-promising. They're not saying that this is the best stuff in the world and you're going to be putting it on your brand new Bugatti Veyron and it's, acting like a 60 micron thick ceramic coating. No, that is not one of the things. So if you have a company running after you and saying, hey, we want you to buy this stuff and you're going to get this exclusive territory and it's only $20,000, invest your 20 grand somewhere else.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you so much, Yvan. That's super enlightening. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, awesome. I think maybe that'd be a good place to finish up. What do you guys say?
Good.
Yeah, actually, just before we wrap up, I do have one more question for you, Yvan.
Go for it.
There's actually something in the back of my mind. Thanks very much. I wanted to ask you something quickly about the new APP, the adhesion promoter polish.
Right.
That this is something that's come out of the whole C6 project, is my understanding, right?
Yes.
So what I was wondering, Yvan, is because I'm actually thinking, like, you're considering selling the APP on the DIY site as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So my question, Yvan, is, does the APP then potentially supplant the panel prep?
Yes. So it's a different form of panel prep. And what the app does, so adhesion promoter polish. So we have an app for that. But what the app does is contrary to a primer polish. So there's been primer polishes in the industry for the last couple of years, and I like the idea of a primer polish, but I don't like the way they work. So I reverse engineered a primer polish to work the way I want it to work. And so the primer polishes in the industry now, they basically fill the pores of the paint, leaving something for the coating to bite onto. And now you're relying on the bond of the primer polish to hold your coating on. But a coating is designed to bond to paint. It's not designed to bond to these other structures. Now, the other structures are great. They work. A lot of people love them. And, so far, some of them have been around for 4 or 5 years and there's no failures because of them. So they're good. But what I wanted to do is very different. I wanted to swell the paint. So our app swells the paint. But now there's a bit of polysilazane and there's a bit of SiO2 in the app that once that paint is swollen, it stays that way. So to do your average size sedan, you're going to go through maybe 15 milliliters or at maximum 20 milliliters of product to do a whole car.
Wow.
So that, I think it's we have a 16-ounce bottle. So whatever that is, 473 mils. Yeah. So
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So that 473 mil bottle will do about 30 to 45 cars, depending on the size of the cars you're doing. Wow. But what we're doing is we're spreading it as lightly as possible over the surface. And it does have a bit of abrasive in it, but the abrasive is there for cleaning. It's not there for cutting. The swelling of the paint enhances the gloss. So when you're polishing paint, if you overheat it, you're going to swell the paint. It's going to look better. When it cools down, it looks like crap. But basically, we're not using heat to swell it. We're using chemicals to swell it, and we're using the chemicals to keep it in that swollen state. Now, when we apply the coating, instead of the coating sitting on top of the paint or on top of the clear coat, or maybe penetrating in 1 micron or so, now that we've opened the pores of the paint and swollen it, we now have the coating going in 2 to 3 microns deep. So now we're creating a 2 to 3 micron thick crust of ceramic coating, even though we're only putting 1 micron's worth of ceramic coating. So it's a different way of looking at it. It's a different technology. It takes an adaptation. So I've been teaching for 30 years now to use a damp pad, to clean your pad after every pass, to never put clean polish on a dirty pad, et cetera, et cetera. So we're using 1 pad to do the whole vehicle. We start as a dry pad. It finishes as a dry pad. We don't clean the pad throughout the whole process because we're not removing any clear coat. There's no accumulation on the pad. And when you're done, if you've done it right, your pad looks the same as when you started. So there's no accumulation of the app in the pad. The other thing go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify. So it's almost like creating, would it be fair to call it like a chemical burr?
Yeah.
That the coating then adheres to? Right. That is so interesting.
Yeah. So basically think of it as, another way of looking at it is if your clear coat is corn kernels, okay, over the whole surface. Now you add a bit of heat and it becomes popcorn.
Popcorn.
That's what, that's an easy way of visualizing it.
There's more surface area. And then when you coat that with ceramic, that and not only does it create the gloss, but then you have the gloss is now cured by the ceramic coating. That is so interesting. More innovation. That is so cool.
Yeah. And then we're using a tool that's unconventional, and that is a random orbital sander.
True.
So, yeah. So the ideal stroke is 3 to 5 millimeters. Now you can go up to a 9 millimeter stroke, but past that, it's too aggressive because what you're doing at that point, and a rotary doesn't work. I would love for a rotary to work with this stuff, but the rotary is not the best tool for the job.
Good to know. Interesting.
Yeah. So, but that little 3 to 5 millimeter stroke just agitates it a little bit, but not enough to overheat it, not enough to create cut. Because again, we're not trying to remove clear coat at this point. We're trying to spread the app over the clear coat, and it's literally buzzing around the car. You're not spending hours, you're spending minutes. I did an Acura TLX the other day, or RLX or whatever. I'm not an Acura fan, so I don't know the names, but a little black 4-door sedan. Took maybe 20 minutes. And you wipe it off dry. So again, contrary to what I've been teaching for 35 years, you wipe it off dry and then you apply the coating. There's no panel prep involved. There's no taping. You do the plastics, you do the headlights, you do the trim, you do the windows, you do everything. Because first and foremost, it's a deep cleaner. Secondly, it's a light abrasive for cleaning. Third, especially on plastics. So, because clear coat is a plastic, it's swelling that plastic surface, making it more receptive to the coating.
That's so
That is
interesting.
so interesting.
Far out.
Yeah. Man, do you think, Ivan, is there any possibility, like, maybe at some point in the future we could have you on to talk about the C6 project? Because that's something I really want to sink my teeth into at some point.
Anytime. I'm available.
Amazing. Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do another episode in the near future. This has been amazing, Ivan. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John. It's an honor.
So let some of the listeners know where they can find you, Ivan, if they want to check you out.
Yeah, DIY Detail. So on YouTube is the easiest way of finding me. So DIY Detail on YouTube or C6 Ceramics on YouTube. Also, we have a Facebook group that is titled DIY Detail. So if you search DIY Detail on Facebook, we have 50,000 members. It is a group that bullying is not tolerated. Being an idiot is not tolerated. Asking questions is definitely tolerated and encouraged, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. And if someone comes up with a stupid answer, they leave the group involuntarily.
Love that.
Awesome, Ivan. Thanks for your time today, and we'll talk soon. See ya.
Thank you, gentlemen.